Okay, we're recording.
Okay, welcome to the November 12th, 2025 Finance and Capital Subcommittee of the Brookline School Committee. The first item on our agenda is approval of minutes for October 16th, 2025 meeting. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
I will second it to spare Jesse having to talk more than he needs to. Jesse, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The next item on our agenda is review and approval of gifts. We have two gifts on the for the meeting. The first one is gift from Larry Jordan Jr. for $5,000 for the BHS ACE Program Scholarship Fund. And then the second one is a gift from the high school PTO for $8,950 to support the BHS Senior Essay Workshop. It's my understanding, based on the attachment, that we received that the Mr. Jordan's gift was actually given for a different purpose last year, and so he's just repurposing it, so it can be spent for a different purpose. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. And it's very generous, very kind, and also the gift from the PTO, which isn't written in the documentation, but my recollection is it covers basically the stipends for the staff who support this, as it says, the paid faculty members. And I think it maybe also covers like breakfast or something like that. Anyway, it covers the cost of the event, which is a really great event.
A great event.
Sarah, have you've done that, right? I did it one year. I thought it was great.
It's a great event.
Yeah. Um, okay, so is there a motion for approval of the two gifts?
So moved.
I will second it. Any more discussion before we go on? Okay, Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, with thanks to Mr. Jordan and the high school PTO. Next item on the agenda is a review of the new position report. So there was
Yep.
3 new positions, 2.2 FTE. And one was a trade for, it looks like a dedicated para for a programmatic para, the first one. And then the second one was a para that's coming out of our reserve funds. And then the third one is a 0.2 FTE at the high school. Susan, could you explain that one a little bit, since it's unusual to see one of those come in partway through the year?
Yeah, sure. So, as you know, we have a lot of churn, and so we have kids coming and going. And there seems to be a pretty a large class of ELL students who are taking biology, and it has grown. The kids that are coming in have different levels of experience with the science curriculum, and so the teacher that's there is unable to provide the supports, the differentiated instruction to such a large number of students. And so we had a teacher that teaches science that is a 0.8, and so we have moved her to a 0.2 to be able to support those students in that class.
So this would be a co-taught class of 2 science teachers.
Yes, who could then differentiate the science lessons and labs to support the kids that are in there with the wide range of background knowledge that they have in science.
The answer might be no, but is there any definition around how many L's can be with teachers that we're accommodating with this?
It's not, I did talk to Robin about this before the meeting, and there isn't a specific concrete number. It really more has to do with the what the students are coming to us with. It could be, you know, it's not an ELL teacher. It's that they're struggling, and they
Yes,
have such a
I
gap
understand.
in their
Yeah.
learning around science. Yeah, so it's each time that we add a second teacher to a class, it would be based on the demographics or the profile of the students that are in that class at that time.
Do we have any other or do we have a history of any other classes at the high school, at least we'll say science classes that are co-taught by two science teachers?
We do.
Do we have that now too?
We do.
Okay, so co-taught by two science teachers, not like a co-taught with special education in science.
No, but we could have some co-taught science as well in our special education area, but we do have other situations where we have two certified teachers teaching in a gen ed class.
Okay. Thank you for that update. It's very interesting. I hadn't
Yep.
realized that was happening, so that's helpful to get that background. Okay, I think unless there's any other questions from the subcommittee on the new position report.
Hey, just one question about the biology teacher then.
Go ahead,
Susan,
Jesse.
you said something about taking a 0.8 down to a 0.2.
I think
Did
she
I-
meant to say adding the 0.2 to the 0.8 so that they were now
Yes.
a 1.0 position.
Okay, that's
Thanks.
what
Yeah.
she said. Okay, right.
It's not what she said, but it's what she meant. Yeah.
That's not what
That's
she
right.
said.
Yes.
Thank you.
It was definitely answered. Yes. The math didn't math, but yeah.
Yeah, you knew what I meant.
Um,
Thanks for translating.
so, okay, so we'll go on to the FY26 Q1 report.
Great.
And
So-
just a reminder to everyone, the FY25 closed report was supposed to be reviewed last week at full school committee, and it got pushed due to the late hour. So we're gonna do that one tomorrow, and in the meantime, we have Q1 teed up right now.
Yes, and that will be presented tomorrow night as well. We'll have lots of financial information tomorrow night. So this report is maybe looks a little different than what you have received previously. It's similar to the fourth quarter report that you got in August. No, was it August? No. September, October, whenever the
It was
fourth was out.
September, I believe, but
September,
I'm not
yeah.
sure. Yeah, September.
Yeah, so it starts with a narrative and following the narrative, which gives you some high-level information about what's happening at that time for that quarter. Then it's followed by three financial components. Two of them are related to your general fund, and one is related to your special revenue funds. So the purpose of the report is to provide periodic updates of how we're trending in terms of, budget to actual as the year progresses. So we're looking now at the first quarter report, which means that it's as of September or through September 30th. And of course, we'd only been in school for 20 days. So not a surprise when you're looking at expenses that are not salary related, that you would see funds available, more funds available at this time for non-salary items than you would for salary items. Salary is encumbered for the year. It's based on a projection that I do as I track all of the changes that occur, throughout the year. So the good news is that, we have an unencumbered balance of about 4 million, and that is similar, slightly less, but similar to what we had at this point in time last year. On the salary side, we're a little under budget there, not any significant amount, less than 1%. In fact, less than 1/3%. And that's great news. One of the things that we made a concerted effort to do is to make sure that we were clear about what the parameters were in the budget, so that when our hiring managers were doing interviews, that they not only considered highly qualified staff, but also if there was a choice of two candidates and one was over budget and one was under, if they would take that into consideration. We have a great cadre of new staff that have come in, and our budget managers did a great job of making decisions that were also fiscally responsible. So that's great. Of course, looking at our monthly report on new positions, that in the first quarter we added 8. 1.8 were funded through extra sections, and 6.2 were funded by eliminating or what we call reassigning other positions. And that leaves 3.2 professional staff sections and 2 paraprofessional FTE available for the remainder of the year in our sections. So again,
That was
good.
before tonight's and October's modifications though, right? This is only the first quarter.
It's only the ones that occurred during the first quarter.
Okay,
It would not include the ones that you approved tonight.
yeah,
That would be in the second quarter.
yes. Or October's, because those also,
October, October is when I give you the information, right? Because I'm doing it monthly, so I'm telling you what report it's on. I believe that the
oh, so
October,
some of the positions we reviewed in October may actually still be in this pool?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that has kind of concluded is our summer programming. And so the summer ESY program was over budget by about 30,000, but our Project Adventure summer program was under budget on the salary side by about 38. So they kind of wash each other out. The ESY program, as you know, from approving the grant, funds the summer program, but if the grant, if we've exceeded the grant allotment, then those resources then have to be funded through the operating budget. So those two will, wash each other out. So the positive variance from the Project Discovery Summer Program will offset the negative on the ASY program. So kind of break even on that. Also, as you know, on the Title I, we got more Title I funding this year than we had anticipated. And when you approve the budget, it was about half the amount of money that we actually received. And so we were able to reallocate some staff that were in our operating budget to the grant. So that was about 105,000. And that was good because when we put the budget together, we had anticipated we'd be able to use the IDEA grant to fund some literacy curriculum and professional development costs that subsequently we learned from DESE we were not allowed to fund. We thought that we'd be able to do this because there was a CCESI requirement. So because we were cited for disproportionate share of one of our student populations, it's being higher than the state then requires us to spend a certain amount of money in our IDEA grant to address the needs of those kids. So that was so that had to come back into the operating budget. But again, one was favorable and the other one created a deficit, but the two kind of wash each other out. So we had some of these shifts between the grant and the operating budget, but they were ultimately basically cost neutral. So that's the salary side. On the
Can I ask
non-salary,
a question on the salary
Sure.
side? In the narrative, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. In the narrative, it says that there's a balance of 300 and where was it? 87. And in the table, the first table, it shows a variance of 437. Should those numbers have been the same if I'm understanding things right or no?
They should have been. So I have a typo is what you're saying?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you, is it
Yes.
a typo or is
Yep.
it something? Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just wasn't sure. And do you know which number is right?
The one in the table.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. The narrative was written before we finalized the other, so I apologize for not catching that
No worries.
on my last update.
I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure that I was understanding where I was supposed to see the numbers.
Yep. Yep.
Donna, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Hi, every time you call on me, the train comes into the station. So I'm sorry for all the noise and I'm sorry that I was a few minutes late. Susan, thank you so much for providing this report. Can you explain why the summer ESY program salaries were over budget? Is that because there were additional staffing needs, or is that because of something else?
No, it's was just over because we added more staff to accommodate the student needs.
And is that because there were more students added? I mean, I know how ESY works, so is it like, could it be because there were more students added than when the plans were originally developed? Is it something along those lines?
Yeah, so
Okay.
of course, when we're preparing the budget, Donna, we're doing it this time of year, and
Right.
and then ESY, of course, is 9 months
Right.
later. And
Right.
so you're giving your best estimate at the time. Of course, you don't know exactly what the student needs are going to look like when you get there. And that's why you always see these kind of budget adjustments throughout the year, including, the FTE report that we show
Right.
up positions, same idea there.
And so historically, is that around, I mean, I know there's not a set number, but historically, is that around what the adjustment is typically every year? So meaning like, is that from your experience, from the time you've been in the district, are we always been off a certain amount and it's around that amount, around $30,000 or no? Or just,
No, actually, this is closer than in the past.
okay,
So,
got it. So we're
yeah,
trending favorably in terms of the forecasting.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions about salary? No? Okay. Just want to make my note here. Okay, so we'll move on to the non-salary side. Again, this is the first quarter, so there's very limited time that's gone by for there to be any kind of real significant changes. There's some things we're monitoring for sure. But I started this section out by just, calling out that non-salaries is 12.5% of our entire budget. That's very small. So that means that, salaries make up the lion's share of our budget. And then of the 17,780,000 that we have on the non-salary lines, the majority of that is for two categories, right? Out of district tuitions, which comes in the form of settlements or out of district tuition line, and transportation. And so when you peel that back, then you're under $9 million for literally all other expenses for the school district. Now you might say that seems like a lot of money, but from my perspective, that's a very, very lean non-salary budget overall. And that, of course, covers the cost of your operational expenses. So like Aspen and Zoom and Blackboard and all of those kind of tools that we use, productivity tools, we call them, as well as instructional tools, attorneys' fees, banking, classroom supplies and materials, your textbooks, all of that. So I just wanted to point that out because there's not a lot of money here left in these lines, and we've cut them back over the course of the time that I've been here. And I'm not saying that there's not a possibility of being able to kind of restructure certain things to get some efficiencies, but I'm just saying that we don't have a lot of money living in the non-salary lines. So a couple of things that have kind of cropped up. We cut, very deep into our curriculum and professional development lines during the budget season, and we cut too lean. So what we learned is that there were some trainings and some curriculum work that was the curriculum work underway that hadn't been completed and needed to be before this year began, that needed to be done in the summertime. So we went ahead and moved forward with that. And then also there were some trainings that teachers needed to take in order to be able to, effectively teach some of the classes, some safety and other protocols that were important for those teachers to have. So we went ahead and moved forward with getting that training for those staff so that we're ready to receive the students when the school year began. So that is the one area you see when you're looking at the line item view that we have a bit of a deficit growing there. We have the ability to offset that with some, perhaps some of the salary savings that we have. But I'll wait, I don't make those kind of transfers out of the salary accounts to cover these until the end of the year. But we do have the capacity to absorb that at this time. The other thing we have an eye on, and we've had an eye on since I've been here, because it just seems to be an area that's hot all the time, is transportation. And so right now, when you look at the reports, we're under by, or underspent by about 36,000. But we have not encumbered the money for the elementary shuttle that we had to add after the school year began, to reduce the length of the route for one of our elementary schools, and that's 35,000. So once we encumber that, which will be up on the upcoming report, then that will essentially disappear, the funds there. We got a report in September about our McKinney-Vento students, and that population of students that required, because not all of them require transportation, but those that do has kind of skyrocketed, and we're looking at 20 students that are in need of transportation. And so we don't have, we haven't identified the total impact of that. We do know that we can look to do some cost sharing with some of the communities that the students are currently residing in. And so we're going to pursue that and see if we can't mitigate the impact of that on our transportation. But some of these numbers, there's not a good way to be able to predict what you're going to get. You might have 5 in one year and you might have 30 in another year. It just isn't predictable. When I did the forecast for out year expenses, I took an average because I don't have any other way to really give a number beyond looking at the average there. So that's kind of an area that we've got our eyes on, and we'll have more information about that on the Q2 report. And the last thing in this area is that.
Susan, one quick question.
Sure.
In the middle paragraph that's showing on the screen, first of all, you have a double dollar sign there. I mean, I probably just.
I just saw that. Yep.
And
I'll
the
fix
second,
that.
yeah, okay, no issue. The elementary shuttle, was that for Pierce?
No. Nope.
Was that?
So we have 2 elementary runs. We had 4 last year, and
Yeah.
we cut 2 buses out. And so we had to add a little shuttle run for one of those elementary runs. So it's the,
Okay.
because the run was consistently running
Late, yeah.
late. So
Okay.
we added a shuttle there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I just ask one question? At the top of the paragraph, we see at the top, the largest portion of our encumbered balance, the 3659, it says 20.5%, but if we go back to the table, the unencumbered balance is more like 4 million, so that's like 80%, not 20%, right?
Where are you at, Mariah?
See the last paragraph, the last sentence, or the next to last, right where the cursor is right now? See how it says that? But the unencumbered, if you go back to the table, is 4339577.
So little.
So I think the numbers here, it should be now, instead of 3659, it should be 3902, but also just the 3902 is 80% of the, or it's, I'm not gonna do the math right now, but it's roughly closer to 90% of the unencumbered total, right?
I'm totally not following you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll bring it up with you later on, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
Or
Maybe we come
maybe
in on
Betsy,
some-
can you scroll down to the next slide, to the next page? I think it is. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah, right there. So see how it says non-salary operating expenses are 3902166,
Yeah.
and then there's 4339 right underneath it. So my understanding was that the sentence says that non-salary unencumbered is the vast majority, and I took that to mean the 3.9 is the vast majority of the 4.3.
That's how I looked at it too, yeah.
Yeah, but then when you go up to the way the sentence is written,
I
it has
wrote
it, It
wrote
has it
wonky
written the other way around.
the other way around.
Yeah, and the
Okay,
percentages aren't right
gotcha.
too. Yeah, okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
that was that final, I had to make, yeah, some final adjustments and then, yeah, I should have gone back and tied that back. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
And then I had another question, actually. Sorry if I could. I'm just scrolling to find it for myself.
You
Oh,
want me to just finish this section? About the copy of this
okay,
or no?
sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that we learned also after the year began is that the copier leases were inadvertently left out of the budget. So this is an expense that is an OTL expense because you're making, the copiers are considered an educational expense, but they're managed by the operations department. And in the process of pulling the budget together, it was missed. The account was not funded. So the leases are 240,000 and have to be funded, and they're encumbered on this report because we had to make the lease payments. Again, that adjustment will be reflected in the upcoming year's budget, but we'll have to probably use some of that salary savings in order to be able to offset the deficit created by the leases being missed. Okay, that's that section. Anything else on that one? Was that where your question?
No, it's up above, and then Donna has a question. Can you scroll up to the top? This is just a question. It's really about the keep going, Betsy, the unencumbered. My question is it typical, is the 4.4 million or whatever it is of unencumbered at this point, is that typical at this time of year to have that level of unencumbered?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Donna?
Hi, thanks so much. Susan, I wanted to ask about transportation. I know that, I think a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, you met with, was it 2 weeks ago? You had to leave to meet with South Brookline families about bus routes and transportation. So I'm wondering if there's anything you want to share about that meeting, but also whether those conversations might result in additional adjustments on the transportation numbers. Or if you're
We're still
expecting those to be, to stay stable.
We're still actively meeting with the South Brookline group, and actually have a meeting with them next week. And we're looking at some potential adjustments we can make to help address some of the concerns that they have. I don't know that it will cost additional money in order to make some of those changes. Perhaps
Okay,
if there's something that's a model change, so really what they're looking for, Donna, is a change perhaps in the model, not
okay,
but I think we can do some more optimizing this year. And if we're going to change the model, that would likely be something that would be funded in the upcoming year's budget, or at least taken into consideration at that time.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, shall we go to special revenue funds?
Sounds good.
Okay. So on the special revenue funds, and again, I know you know this, Mariah, but since Donna's new, just give a little orientation. So special revenue funds are funds that are established either really by law or in some cases, grants, for example. There are opportunities that we have to apply for additional resources to support our school district needs. For federal grants, they're recurring grants, and they're an intimate part of our spending plan for the upcoming year. And so you take into consideration what the nature of the grant is, and as you're putting together your financial plan, you align, the needs and the requirements of the grant to the educational needs as you see them overall at the time. So the IDEA grant is one of those, but also the title grants are part of the federal grouping of grants, and we apply for them, but they're entitlement grants. So in other words, they give us an allocation, and then we write the grant to meet that allocation. It's not competitive. Everyone is given an allocation And one of the things that we'll be looking at in the upcoming year is a reduction in our title grants. It does not look like we will be receiving Title II, III, or IV in upcoming years. That is from everything that I'm hearing and seeing. That's the way it's looking. So this may very well be the last year we get those grants. It does look like we will get some resources for IDEA and Title I, but of course, there's a lot of conversation to be had at the federal level before we'll really know how that translates into us locally. And then, so there's federal grants and then there's state grants, and some of those are recurring and some of those are one time. And those that we rely on as to fund positions and maybe supplies and materials that are again part of our basic educational program are included, and we report out on those. They're in your budget documents. And then the last category are revolving funds. So that would be like BEEP and food service and the material fee, which is considered non-resident tuition, would fall under that. Also, METCO is a state grant, so that would be in the state grant category. For revolving funds, you can only set up a revolving fund for certain fee-based programs, and you can only spend money out of those as related to the purpose for which you collected the fees. So it's not something that can just, you can't, in other words, spend food service money on textbooks. You have to spend the money you collect in food service on the food and the staff that deliver the food. Just like athletics, you raise the fees for athletics, you can't then be charging textbooks to the athletic revolving fund. So it's very, they're called restricted funds, and there's only certain things that you can use any of these special revenue funds for. So that's just a little orientation on special revenue funds. Now, one of the things that is kind of like the good news is that we closed out 21 grants last year. So there was many grants that were, which means that the management of our grants has improved dramatically over the last couple of years. And in fact, in this quarter, we'll be closing out another 3 or 4. So the FY24 grants will be closed out timely. We still have to do the final reports and all of that, which is, on our list of things to do. But we will be closing those out timely. The grant expires and we've used most of the money. So what's left now is some 25 expenses, and even some of the 25 grants will be closed out. And so we're kind of up to date and current on, which is really good news. That means that when we apply for the grants and we're delivering on the programs and the outcomes that we're hoping for by applying for the grant. And so I think that, from my perspective, that's really good news. And of course, in the CLA report, they talked about special revenue funds and, having balances in those, and some of, that information that had been shared. I just thought it was important to take a moment to share with you that we are really current on our grants. Also, the other good news is that all of our grants were written and submitted and approved before the school year began, so that spending can for the entire year can be charged off to the grants. It was cumbersome a bit because the town has certain protocols in place that don't allow us to charge the grants until after the school committee accepts them, and we have notification from the state. So we'll change when it comes to approving our budget at the end of this budget season. I'm going to ask you to take action to approve the grants as presented, so that when the information comes out in the summertime and the state gives us our allocation, that the town will then set up our accounts so that we can start the school year off paying for our staff directly out of it and not have to be doing tons of journal entries in the month of September in order to get people in the right bucket starting so that I can give you a report that's accurate. Okay, so the other kind of conversational piece is that, as you know, the town has had challenges, as we all have, with staffing, and it's it has created delays in posting our receipts. And so what that's caused is that most every budget manager that has a revolving fund and or a grant winds up having to keep their own set of records about how much money we've taken in and what expenses are associated with that particular month, because until they're posted, we can't see them in Munis. And if we can't see them in Munis, then it makes it really challenging, first to report, but also to manage a program. So the town has requested that we take over responsibility for posting the receipts. And we'll gladly take that on. However, it's a capacity issue. And so I'm looking at ways that we can maybe restructure and be more efficient in the finance office. And hopefully we'll be able to, take that on, because then, the receipts will be posted timely and accurately, because we're the ones that know what the money is when it comes in. So that'll be great, and we're happy to take that on as soon as we can figure out a way to adjust workflows there.
What
So
is the FTE of the person in the town or the people in the town side who do this? Who post the revenues now?
I don't know. I don't know, Mariah.
I mean, I think that it's a good idea, but also it has an extra capacity and resource question to it. And to the extent that that work is being transferred, having the commensurate FTE funding be transferred back over if this is where the work is going to be done on this side of the house.
And to your point, Mariah, I would imagine that it would mean that they cannot allocate a certain percentage of the finance office that they have been in the past, which is, again, when we get to above the line and below the line and things that are taken out, before we get our allocation, I think that's where that conversation needs to take place for sure. Doesn't
Right.
change. Yeah.
I mean, well, that's what the question is what is
Yeah.
the dollars associated with this that has been implicitly or explicitly transferred to support this function?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer.
Okay. Can I ask a question about all of the revenue funds that have been closed? So in prior years, we would see, I'll just pick on one that I remember was memorable, the BU Saudi gift, I think it was, but I didn't see that on the report of special revenue funds. So is that one of the ones that were closed? How do we see which ones are closed?
So those aren't closed. So one of the things that's different, so what you had gotten is a report, what you had been receiving before is a report that included all of these old accounts. Those aren't closed out yet. We have a lot of work to do, but they're not active either. So some of them are not active, and that would be one of them. And so I'm not showing those because it has no impact on our financial position. And then there's ones that are just, we call them like lost book accounts, and it's money in and money out. It has, again, nothing to do with our financial position. So I have not included those in the financial report for that reason. It doesn't have any impact on our financial position. And so therefore spending the time to just to keep accounting for things that have no impact on us, and going to a more streamlined approach to financial reporting. So typically all of those accounts, all those little accounts and stuff you would see at your fourth quarter at the end, which I gave you, but not during the course of the year. It's just not typical. So that's the reason why I have taken all of those like little one-off accounts that are no longer active and or that are just money in and money out type of accounts, like donations and things like that, off the report.
But we'll see them at the year close, you're saying?
Yes, that's typical. At the close of the year, you get an accounting of all of them, like I did and then you can see if there's any big activity. And then when those accounts are closed out on the fourth quarter, you would see at that time, the problem with like the Saudi, you have to go back and research where that grant or those funds came from. And just like the one you voted on tonight, we had to track down the person who gave that donation, and we had to get permission to use it another way or
Right.
return it. So it's an enormous amount of work to just track down all these little bits of money and get them off your books. It's
Mhm.
worthwhile when you have the capacity, but it's not something we really have the capacity. And from my perspective, I want people to really understand and focus the conversation on the things that are really germane to, what's going to impact us potentially one way or another throughout the year. And those things are not in that category.
Can we look at the table of these a little bit?
Yes,
Donna, hang on one second, because I just want to understand how to interpret the table because it wasn't immediately obvious to me.
sure.
Keep going. It's not this one. It's go to like the third page, I think. Or the fourth page. It's not this. And we didn't talk about those, and I have a question about those too. So could you just on the FY24 Title 1 as an example, could you explain how to interpret what's happening here?
Sure. So typically when I'm looking at Title I or any other grant, these are areas in which we receive revenue. We don't receive any revenue for our general fund, right? That's money that's comes through taxation, or even if it's coming from the state, it all goes to the town. So we're kind of, blind to that. But when you get to your special revenue funds, we are actually taking in revenue. And I like to be able to track whether revenues coming in as we had anticipated they would. So for Title I, what gets a little wonky is in the prior year ones. So so I tried to footnote this, but okay, try not to get in the weeds and confusing.
Is part of this that the expense is the current year expense against a prior year that has multiple years of revenue, possibly multiple years of expense
Yeah.
charged? Okay, so that
So
that probably answers my question right there. But, yeah.
It does, but it's odd because 4-year grants so the way the town handles special revenue funds is they treat it on a cash basis instead of what they call a modified accrual basis. And when you treat it on a cash basis, then what's happening, what you're seeing here is you're seeing a revenue of 61,000, but you're only seeing expense of 32. And the reason why is because we're going to get money in after July 1 that is for reimbursement of expenses from the prior fiscal year. If the town used a modified accrual basis, then they would be posting those receipts in the fiscal year in which the reimbursement was, but that's not the way the town of Brookline does that. So it makes our grants look really weird when you're looking at them here. So for 24 and 25, and you'll see this, if you see a revenue that's higher than the expense, it's because you have a prior year reimbursement that has not hit the books yet. And once we get them, then the grant will be reimbursed for the expenses that we've already recorded and that you've already seen. And there's no other way. I want to tie to Munis so that when we look at the reports, there's a connection to them. And so that it does look a little bit weird. Once we close the 24 and the 25, like 26 looks normal, right? Here's the revenue, here's the expense, and everything is in the current fiscal year. But in the prior grant years, they're out of sync. And so they look weird. But what I
Donna?
can tell you, so how do you improve? So what do I look at? I say, okay, is there a variance? If there's not a variance, that means I'm going to receive all the money on the revenue that I anticipated I would receive. Good news. On the expense side, it's the same. In the first quarter, we've processed through a warrant, $3,256 worth of expenses, and there's POs and or payroll that is due in the amount of 28,801. The variance of 319 in this particular case will go unspent. And so we will not use that part of the grant because that grant is expired. as of August 30th. So that's money that we won't ever access. And when we close the grant, it will just close as it's presented here. On 25, if you go to the 25 grant, though, you can see we're going to spend that in full. And so when we close that grant, which will be this year, then we will have used every dime of the FY25 Title I allocation. So that's the good news. So that's kind of how you read that. Is that helpful or more confusing?
I think it's more information than the committee needs, but that's okay. I think it's
Yeah, I
fine.
understand why it's necessary for you to have
Yeah.
this.
I'm not sure it's necessary for us, but
And
but
the
okay.
column of adjusting budget, would that have been a ticked off, or would you have, I mean, it might not be a column that you need because if it's happening in the past, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and those are confusing and they will come down. It makes a little bit more sense as you move down. Like, I'll give you an example. Go down to the PRISM grant for 26. Let me explain what happened here.
And didn't Title I get adjusted? Because didn't we get another 103,000 in? But it doesn't show it as adjusted.
103,000. I'm not following
Didn't we
that.
just talk, I mean, wasn't that up in the document earlier? And we talked about it at one of our earlier meetings, that I think it was Title I, we got an additional 103, 105. The Title I grant allocation was higher than anticipating, allowing us to shift some
Yeah.
staff. But the the FY26 Title I grant doesn't show the adjustment.
No, and it wouldn't, because when we applied for the grant, it was for the higher amount. So once you accept the grant and the school committee accepts the grant for 600,000, then that's the baseline. It's
So it
not what we
wasn't our
put in the
budget that
budget.
we voted last year, the baseline?
No. It's what
Okay.
no, it's what you accept for the grant. That's the
Okay.
baseline.
Okay. I see Donna's hand is up. I don't want to.
Hi, thanks. Actually, can you just explain what the conversation you just had 2 seconds ago about what the baseline is and the $103,000? Can you explain that? Because I didn't understand what you guys, I didn't understand what was being discussed, or like, I mean,
In my
if it's
mind,
not important for me to know, then
I
that's
think
okay.
it's important. I think it's important. In my mind, the original budget is the one we voted that was then approved by town meeting. Now, granted, that's our general fund budget, but it also, we include in the backup to this, all of the projections for the special revenue funds. Now, Susan is saying that in this presentation, or in her way she thinks about it, because the special revenue funds, we vote to accept them, that becomes the new baseline for them, which I can understand. It's just a different way to think about it. It wasn't how I thought
So
about it.
am I right when I'm saying, like, are you talking about the discrepancy between sort of what we asked for and what was awarded?
No.
Oh,
Well, when last winter, when Susan is putting together the entire budget, she's also forecasting how much we're gonna get from these entitlement programs. Because they're sort of part of the whole way that we provide education. And so there's a forecasted amount in there, which comes from different ways that she can sort of estimate what we're gonna get. Does that make
So-
sense, Donna?
sorry. I think it does make sense. And Susan, is there a way to incorporate that information as well, or that's just too cumbersome, or what are your thoughts on that?
So what happens during the budget build is that we level fund the grants. I don't do any forecasting for the grants. I'd have no way of knowing what we're going to get for the grants. So when we present the budget, it's based on level funding of our grants. What
I thought
happens,
circuit breaker was, oh no, I guess because it's already a year forward, so you already know what it's gonna be. Okay.
right, and
Yeah,
circuit
yeah.
breaker is not a grant, it's a revolving fund. So
Well, special revenue fund, okay.
yeah, so they're different. The special revenue funds include revolving funds and grants. On the grants, we level fund them unless we don't think we're going to receive them. And then we would just simply not include that. Likely for Title II, III, and IV this year, I'll put them in the budget, but I'll show that it's zero so that people have clarity around what we believe we'll get for money and what we won't. But even when you see Title I, well, Title I, I have some insider information. It was like a one-time increase, I was told. this blip in additional resources for Title I, so I'll probably go back to the prior year allocation on that one, but in general, it's level funded. And so when we get our allocation from the state, then we write the grant. And when we write the grant, we come to the finance subcommittee, you review that, you give your thumbs up or ask questions, and then we submit it. And so that becomes the baseline. And then the school committee, once, then goes and accepts the grant. So that's the way the grant piece works. On the revolving funds, we try to do some forecasting as best we can with the information that we have. We do forecasting for the revolving funds. And then, so when you would have an adjustment, and you do have a couple of adjusted budgets here, in the area of circuit breaker, I had mentioned we got $607,000 in revenue that we didn't anticipate. So you see an adjusted budget there, and that allows you to see that we're getting revenue that I hadn't anticipated. Or likewise, if there was an expense and there had to be an adjustment on that side, then I would make an adjustment there as well. So that's the difference between budget, adjusted budget, and then what we receive, what's encumbered in the variance.
So if we go back to the FY26 Prism 3 one that you were going to point out earlier,
Yes.
I
that
wanted
one.
to see that too. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so you're saying, so when we originally voted it for you to submit, it was submitted at 207 and then they gave you an extra 50,000? Is that what happened?
Oh, what happened is they gave us so that grant was like, we had 2 weeks to turn it around. It was like something that kind of came out really, really late, and we didn't have a significant turnaround time. Not only did we not have time to write the grant, but we also had to spend it. And we had to spend it by August 30th, and you lose it. Just before the grant closed, they said to folks that had applied for this grant, hey, you can have an additional amount of money. But it was by the time that they had given us the allocation, the adjustment, there wasn't time to spend it. And because it was for very specific expenses, there was no way to reclass any expenses to be able to use that money. So we had to give it back, is ultimately what's going to happen on that, because the grant's closed. But yeah, so that's very unusual, that situation, that we would get, very short notice that we could get 52,000, but again, this requires bids and pricing and so in that particular case, we're not able to use that money.
So you use, just so that I understand, the 207 that's in revenue is the actual received revenue, and that's why it doesn't say 257 there.
Right, that was the original approved 207. Then they were going to give us this 52,000. So that's the adjustment. We weren't able to use it. And we haven't received the cash because it's on a reimbursement basis. So
I don't love this new way of thinking about it, like the boxes at the revenue expense, because it's throwing me off. Like, why does that row equal 307 on the end? You didn't ever get 307, but because you have the negative 50, it's like adding or subtracting the negative to make it 307. I'm just finding it like confusing for my brain to wrap around. And
Can I ask a question to make sure that I'm following the conversation? If the reverse happens, Susan, like meaning we got less money than we had asked for, how would that look for the Prism grant? Like, let's just say instead of getting an extra 50, we got $50,000 less.
If they reduced it, then this number would be less under the adjusted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mariah, so you're just saying the layout is confusing, not obviously.
Yeah, she's saying the encumbrance number doesn't make sense, and I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that's throwing me off, but I think like I totally appreciate what you're saying of being able to draw a straight line between Munis and this report, and from the, I'll say, public consumption, and I count myself as a member of the public in this context, it's hard for me to understand what's going on here, and I think that we need to maybe think about how to make it a little less confusing to interpret.
Sure.
Because of what you said of like how the multiple years of expenses against a single year revenue source, et cetera. Like I just think it would be helpful um to perhaps to work on that a little bit more. With that said, I love overall, like it's like this report is really helpful in understanding where things are going. And this this section is confusing to me. And I don't think it needs to be. Can I go up and back to the section where we had the general fund or by cost area, by cost center? Because many of them have very small variances. But then if you go up to like OTL and OSS, I think are the big variances. No, OSS and ANF are the big variances. And I was just curious, is that what you expected?
I'm sorry. I was just making notes on that sheet.
Sure. Did you catch my
Now
question
I'm
or
back
should I
with, no, I
repeat it?
didn't. Please
Okay,
repeat.
so so I think the total variance was like 4 million, and 20% of it or so, a little more than 20% is in A and F in the 874 variance, and almost half of it is in student services. So between the two of them, that's like the lion's share of the total variance. And my question was if that was what you had expected, if there's a reason for that, why is the variance so concentrated in those two offices?
Things are encumbered. It's a good question. So things are encumbered many times as needed or when certain expenses come due. And so in ANF, for example, some of our licenses don't come due, like for Aspen and things like that, as the fiscal year begins. So we'll encumber that for the year when it comes closer to the time in which that expense is realized. Same with student services. So not all of the expenses for the whole year are encumbered, especially on the operating side. And so there's some shifts there that will happen. You'll see it again. We're only 20 days into the school year, so it's on the expense side. Salary side is a little different. Salary side, I'm encumbering. I'm doing a forecast for the year because you have to do it that way. Otherwise, just like last year, you didn't get really encumbrances by cost center because I wasn't able to do a forecast that aligned with the format that we have now. So I can encumber now and forecast out what our expenses are going to be on that side. But on the non-salary side, it's always going to be you just don't do POs at the beginning of the year for everything that you're going to need. So those change as the year goes on. So.
Okay, because I was reflecting back on the spring, Donna, I see your hand up, and the conversations we had about OSS not being able to pay bills because they didn't have the POs, and they didn't have the POs because they hadn't encumbered. And so seeing that large number was making me wonder if everything that should be encumbered is encumbered. Do you feel confident that everything that should be encumbered is encumbered such that the total, the sort of the flow will not be impeded the way it was a little bit last year?
Well, the flow won't be impeded because every contract that's needed right up to date has been issued. And anything that we have a contract for that OSS has said that they need has a PO and it's encumbered here.
Okay, so there's nothing where we had things going, but no encumbrance in place. That's great to hear. Donna? You're on mute in case you're talking. We will come back to you if it's
Okay, now I can.
Oh, there you go.
couldn't unmute for a second, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
If I'm, okay, I think I know, I think I'm asking something that makes sense, but please feel free to tell me if it's not. The line item report and the cost item report are essentially like the same, right? Except they're just information in different formats. So you're looking at kind of different information. And so if that's true, I think the response you just gave to Mariah might apply to my question as well, which is when I'm looking at the line item report, I was looking at the variances in some categories as well, like big, like claims and settlements and general supplies and what was the other one? Professional technical services. Are those variances explained by the same things?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not, so there's a difference between a variance and a free balance. Like you can have a variance because you haven't booked in your accounting system
Right.
expenses that you have that are coming up, right? And so like there's a high volume of work that's done over the course of the summer and the beginning of the year. So usually you, especially in OSS and oftentimes in OAF, you pace your work, right? And so you're going to do your POs and your contracts for everything that you need, starting September 1, but not everything you need comes at September 1 timeframe. And so you will continue to encumber and issue POs and perhaps be more contracts, as the year progresses. And at that time, then you issue a PO and you encumber it. So it's not a forecast really on the encumbrance. It's what we're obligated to at this point in time in the year. Doesn't mean that everything that we need has been encumbered. Just means that what we need and we have issued a PO for or paid is represented here.
Okay, that's helpful.
I mean, I think there's a tension too between, if you have encumbered it, then it's clear you know where your money's going. And I don't know what the limits are of the munis system, but being able to encumber it so that you're showing like where it's going to be generally spent, as opposed to it looking like unallocated or unplanned for expenses. And you're saying this doesn't tell you either way. And I guess I'm saying that it's good when we see it encumbered because we know what the plan is, as long as they're sort of true encumbrances and not just phony baloney. Not that you're doing that, but just in general as sort of a financial practice, have it be shown what the plan is. But it's
Yeah, you
helpful
would
to
not,
understand. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, you wouldn't encumber things that are like, maybe we'll need that, right? Because if you, maybe it'll be this or that. No, we have a financial plan and you approved it and we'll execute on that plan throughout the year. This is just an update on the status of from budget to the activity that's taken place that's known at this time. This is where, where we are. We will, at the next report, those numbers will look different. And that will be what it is at that point in time. I mean, financial reports aren't forecasts and forecasts aren't budgets, right? So
Mhm.
this is just a typical standard financial report. It isn't intended to say, now, what I will do when we come to about April timeframe, that's when I will look and I'll try to project out where I think we're going to land for the year. Not this early not this early.
Sure.
I do try to do what I call a cost to complete. That is typically done in the, like around May of each year.
I think we'll let Jesse get the last word before we move on to the Brookline Music School proposal. Go ahead, Jesse.
Just wanted to maybe just emphasize what you said, that on the OSS side, we're completely in control of the situation. From what I heard you say, that all contracts are moving ahead, everything that's encumbered to pay as the POs come in is in place, and we don't have any, inkling of anything happening, moving forward. Everything is going smoothly, so that we're not anticipating any interruption of service or payments or anything, and that's just a really good place to be. So thank you.
It is.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay, our next presentation, and thank you, Susan, and thank you to Z and others who contributed to assembling this report. Much appreciated. The next presentation is of the Brookline Music School what did we call it in our budget, in our agenda? Brookline Music School, something, I'm sorry.
I think we called it the
Recital
recital
Hall
hall.
Expansion Project. There we
Yes.
go. And David Tierney is here to join us. And before we have you start, David, I'll just put some context for anybody who doesn't know that the Brookline Music School building is a PSB building, which is leased to the Brookline Music School, which is why this is coming to the school committee for review and approval. So with that, David, please take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm here to ask your approval for us to move forward with an expansion and renovation of our current recital hall. The recital hall right now is a double parlor on the Kennard side of the building of about 1,033 square feet with a performance space and audience seating for 60. If we can move forward with this project, we would enclose the porch that's on the Kennard roadside, adding an additional 431 square feet, doubling audience capacity to 120. The renovated hall, it currently has a flat floor. It will continue to have a flat floor, meaning it's accessible, fully accessible. But the new setup of the hall will actually make it much easier for people with physical challenges to get in and out of the hall. Currently, when you step into the hall, you immediately step into the middle of the audience, and leaving or getting to the bathroom is very, very difficult for most people, regardless of their abilities. Moving on to the next slide. Our goals are to be able to increase the frequency and elevate the quality of student performances in that space, to double the audience capacity in a welcoming, flexible space that fosters a sense of community, create a flexible use space that allows us to comfortably hold, it says larger audiences. The truth would be to hold the audiences we're getting now, which aren't really meeting code for ensembles and concerts and rehearsals. And to have a designated music performance space of this size that the whole Brookline community could use and appreciate music in. The large space will also better support our new summer programs in chamber music, Flute Institute, Broadway in Brookline, and Jazz Lab. And with these programs, we actually work really closely with Kenny Kozal and the public school Brookline folks to make them available for no tuition to students who would otherwise not have the resources to attend summer programs. And Kenny coordinates with us with both the STEP program and Metco to be sure those kids have had the opportunities. The expanded space could be used, and it already is used, but could be used better by Lincoln School and even other PSB schools if they can come over to the building for any kind of program, performance or otherwise. It would be better served by a hall of this size. And all PSB use of Kennard House facilities is done free of charge. Next slide. So the description is we would produce or end up with an acoustically appropriate performance space, so it elevate performances, increase the audience capacity, with upgraded furnishing and lighting, create a much better space for a wider range of performances, including recitals, jazz and rock bands, and other musical performances. We expect the total expansion cost to be a little bit north of $800,000, and of course would be the complete responsibility of the music school. Next slide. Here's our timeline of what we're looking at. We did do a feasibility study to determine whether or not we had the support, financial and otherwise, to go ahead, and we have gotten that. Actually, as of today, we have just north of $500,000 in quiet commitments to the program. We're in the process of seeking town and committee approvals. We did have an advisory meeting with Preservation Commission. They loved the project. And when we look at the pictures at the end, I'll tell you what they've asked us to change. We are in the middle of Major Gift, the quiet phase, hoping to secure 3/4 of the cost by year's end. And then we'll go public with the campaign if all else is in place. We would plan on doing construction starting right after school gets out in June, hoping that the exterior work would be completed quickly and without disrupting Lincoln School classes, of course, and then we could be back inside the building in the fall. And then the next phase. Here are the key people who are involved. Obviously, the board of trustees for the school, myself, Vicky Lau, many of you know, longtime Brookline resident and our treasurer. Valerie Kurtz, our marketing development person, and our consultant is a woman named Jen Hickenbotham. Many people have connections with me from my years at the River School. Next slide. Here's a picture of that Kennard side of the building now. So you can see the open porch. And the next slide has a view of the renovation with the porch to the right of the building closed in. This is sort of an angle from the playground that's outside Lincoln School. Next picture. This is the same general direction, but from the Kennard Road side, and you can see the enclosed porch that we would end up with. And then the next two pictures, preservation asked us to show what it would look like at night with all the lights on, just to see what the sort of effect would be in the neighborhood, and that's what these are. And then the last picture is what the hall would look like on the inside. So you can see it's a different orientation. If you've been in there, you know what we do now, and much easier access and maneuverability around the room, and a much friendlier performance experience. So there's where we're at.
Thank you for that. Are there questions from the subcommittee for David?
Just want to start by saying thank you for the presentation and for the idea for all of us who have sat in that room for lots of performances. It's a very exciting project.
It is, and the support is really, I had to say I'm overwhelmed at the strength of support from our donors and people in the community.
David, have you discussed with the town at all pursuing Community Preservation Act funding for this? Would this project be eligible, and have you inquired about that?
Yes, and the answer is no.
You're not eligible. Okay.
Right, but there are other projects that we have in mind down the road that we would be, including redoing all the windows on that building, which it desperately need. And these
Okay.
are all in the terms of agreement the Lee School has with the town now, solely our responsibility financially. So we will pursue them.
Jesse?
Yeah, hi, David. From the
Hi.
first time I saw this proposal several months back, I love it. And although I've never been at a recital there, I can appreciate going from overcrowded to something much warmer and accessible to everyone. So I just love it, and you know, Godspeed to you. I hope it works out and how we can help. Thanks.
Thank you.
David, I want to say thank you for, addressing the accessibility and also the community benefits, not only to PSB, but to the broader community. I think it sounds like it will be a space that will be a true benefit to the community for multiple purposes. And I appreciate that PSB has access to it free of charge. Obviously, when Brookline Music School is not using it as well, I think that's a tremendous benefit to highlight as part of this process.
Well, we had Kenny's great to work with. And the nature of our program dovetails nicely with the schedule of public schools, that we're fairly quiet when you're at your busiest. So it works.
Yeah, great. Jesse, is that a new hand?
It is.
Okay, go
On
for it.
on that comment, I forgot to ask it earlier. How is the time scheduled on a 7-day a week during the day or evening basis?
Prime time is roughly 3 to 8 Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 on Saturday, and about 9 to 5 on Sunday. There are off those hours things like Tuesdays. We started an adult orchestra that rehearses in the middle of the day, primarily for seniors. So 11:30 to 1, the building's pretty busy with a small orchestra, and off lessons here and there. But it's really very quiet until 2 o'clock, and then things start to trickle in.
So is there like how do people schedule time in general? Like if I don't know, if another music group from, Brookline or Newton wanted to rent the space or use the space, on some basis, is this space available? Or is it sort of full like 95% of the time?
It's full now because of how we have to use the space in the building.
I got it.
When it becomes a recital hall, its use as a teaching space stops, which
Okay.
means more things that the room is suited for can happen than we can currently fit in.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, and then I think we'll take a motion after that.
This is a question for you, Mariah, just to help me with my memory. What other things are going on at Lincoln during the summer that the construction may or may not impact?
I'm not sure it's a question for me. Star Academy has been at Lincoln, but different programs didn't run at Lincoln for the past 2 summers. So it's more of a question for, I think, Susan and the operations team. They work around, like, there's a whole bunch of coordination that happens to decide which summer programs run where based on what's happening in the buildings during the summer, whether they need to be closed for refreshes or other things.
So that's something that can be answered later.
It might have, I don't know, I think Susan is still here. Yeah, Susan, do you happen to know if Lincoln is on or off the schedule for this summer?
It would be back on the schedule. That's what we were anticipating after all the renovations were done there.
But this is the following year anyway, right? Or no, it's already this January. Wow, it's so fast.
No, it's this year.
My goodness. Okay. Well, I'm gonna make a motion for recommendation.
Mariah,
yeah.
one question.
Yeah.
David, when you met with the town, or if any feedback did you get in terms of parking? So going to something which it's somewhat limited, I guess, because, or maybe you said they're always over, you have these overcapacity times SRO and maybe even not even to code. The
No
parking
one
lot.
said that. We're not talking that. That never happened.
Never. Okay, good.
Keep
So,
going.
I guess my question is, I mean, I've been to Lincoln many times. The parking lot, when it gets full, it's overflow onto the streets. Kennard is narrow, Walnut Street, and et cetera. You start sending it back. Is there any concern from the town side about overcrowding of parking if more people start coming to this particular location? Not that the idea is bad, it's an amazing idea, but it's
Yeah.
located in a very tiny street area.
No.
Okay.
Well, because I promised them that I probably shouldn't have made this promise, because you build something and it always gets used more than you anticipated.
That's
But
right.
we're not looking at doing bigger and more audience things. We're just looking at making the experience right now better for the audience that we get. Currently, parents often cycle in and out of the recital hall, waiting in the lobby for their kid to play, to come in and hear them. We would not have to do that anymore.
Right.
When we don't teach in that space anymore, it would actually reduce your typical enrollment by 4 people a day. So there'd be 4 less cars trying to find a place to park. And we are looking for some additional space elsewhere in town to move more teaching program elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna make the motion for recommendation of approval by the full school committee. Do I have a second?
I'll
Yes.
second that. Oh, okay.
Okay, Jesse seconds. Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you,
Oh, thank
David, for
you.
this presentation. I don't know if you and Betsy, did Betsy schedule you for tomorrow, or have you been scheduled yet?
I
It's
think
not,
December. Oh, sorry,
yeah, it's not
Betsy.
on tomorrow night, maybe December 4th, if that works for you,
Yeah.
David.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that was
great.
fine.
Okay.
Great.
Excellent.
you.
Thank you very much for
All
coming,
right.
David.
You.
I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
this. Thanks so much.
Next item on the agenda, we have 2 little things about CIP. One was just a CIP for this year update that we met last week. Jesse, I'm just going to save your voice and give a quick update, and then you can add in anything I forget. So
Thank you.
Jesse and I met last week with and I think Susan was there too, with the advisory committee, capital subcommittee. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Recently. And discussed a couple of different things, including definitions of deferred maintenance versus new projects, et cetera. And then Jesse and then the committee was supposed to meet earlier today, but that ended up getting canceled. And Jesse and I met with Carol briefly yesterday to review a couple of things relating to the sort of ongoing conversations. And so it seems like it's moving ahead, and we'll keep this committee posted just as advisory continues in its process. So that was the only update for you all. And of course, those meetings are posted and you're always welcome to join too, to listen along.
And there wasn't an attachment for us in the email.
Yeah, there's
okay.
no, that it was just this sort of like, here's where things are at. We've been meeting, et cetera. And when we originally did this schedule, we only found out yesterday that they weren't meeting right before now, so we thought we'd have a little bit more of an update, but we don't.
Right,
so
but
that's that.
yeah, that's
Go
right.
ahead, Jesse. What did I forget?
I was just going to say that part of the initiative, maybe even to Sarah's question, is that we want to sort of work more closely and have a more of a better understanding, I guess, maybe between the advisory and town and schools about the capital projects that we are outlining and approving, and the deferred maintenance projects that Charlie's doing from the building side. So part of like a beginning of trying to align the two, and that's what Mariah and I have been working on. So so to Sarah's question, when it gets a little better, better defined, you know, obviously this information will be shared and discussed within this committee and then with the full school committee.
And that's something that I can always trust with Jesse, is that if it's going to be posted, it will be posted early enough for me to be able to read it when Jesse's involved. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda was the summer updates. We got pictures of stuff, but we don't have anyone joining us from the building committee. So I think Betsy, we got pictures of the summer work with the buildings. I think Betsy is going to just share that, like post it to the website and share it with the committee afterwards so you can see some of the pictures. But it's a little tricky because we don't necessarily know what we're looking at without having a building department person here to Charlie or someone from his team to sort of narrate the exciting things in the picture. So we'll skip over that one for now, but get some pictures circulated later on for whatever they're worth. And then the last thing on our agenda is review of the school floor plans and space utilization. And Susan, do you want to talk through this? I'll just say before Susan gets going that expenditures and revenues committee had requested, the schools subcommittee had requested as a follow-up to some questions and confusion about how the enrollment report actually relates to schools. There was some questions about how our buildings are utilized and whether they're fully utilized. The questions, the answers that had come back from PSB to expenditures and revenues in September, I think that was, had said that there was 6 unused classrooms, and there was some confusion because of how people had misinterpreted the enrollment report. So this actually, what Susan's about to present is, at least for the K-8s, what is, you can sort of see all the different use, and with that, I'll let Susan go from there.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So what we were asked for is to provide information on how we were using the space in our buildings. And so we took the floor plans that we have available to us, and I had the principals take the floor plans and then jot down what each room was being used for. And then I had my staff take that information and apply it in a consistent way across all of the floor plans. In essence, I guess the short story is that as we had indicated a couple of, maybe a month ago when we answered the questions for the Revenue Expenditure Committee, that we have 6 classroom spaces that are currently not being used. Those are at the Driscoll School. So if you go to the Driscoll floor plans and you look at, you know, floor 3 and 4, you'll see in green text the words open, and that those are the classrooms that we are currently not using. And again, it's the green text, not the green. The green means it's a staff bathroom, I believe.
It's
what the
floor,
green-
I think it's 9 and 10, maybe, Betsy, if you look at it's go one more up. You can see
There we
yeah,
go.
there's 2 there and 1 is cut off, so you can't see it, but it's 9 and it's pages 9 and 10 have the 3 classrooms.
So there's 3 on this floor and 3 on the other floor. Those are where the open classrooms are.
And otherwise, basically every room in the building of all those schools has been noted what is happening in the what's happening in that space.
So I guess the takeaway also, in addition to that there's 6 classrooms that are open, is that not, you know, when people look at the sections report, they translated that into the number of classrooms in a building. And the the number of classrooms are not the same as the number of sections. So I tried to explain that in the narrative, that some classrooms are used for special education. Some are used for ELL or ELE. Some are for art, and some are for music and PE and such. So there's many other classrooms that are needed in a school besides just the classroom that a teacher is teaching in for your core subject areas. As you get to the middle school, you see grades 7 and 8, and those go to content area rooms. So in most of the schools, you'll see social studies, science, ELA, et cetera, on some of the floors. And that's because those are content area teachers as opposed to an elementary classroom teacher that's teaching across all grades. So schools are, I know it's easier to think about, you have X number of classroom teachers, and that translates into how many rooms you need, but it really isn't like that in practice, right? We have a lot of needs. We have people that work, custodial staff need to have a room in order to, look up work orders and, take lunch breaks for teachers and all kinds of other things that happen in the course of a day that we need space for. So including storage, parking in some schools, et cetera. So hopefully that helps answers the question about the availability of classrooms in our schools. Certainly happy to try to help support them in their work and answer whatever questions we can that you might have.
And the reason this is coming to this subcommittee is so that it goes to school committee first before being provided to expenditures and revenues, so that school committee has eyes on it too, and is aware of this dialogue. Are there any questions from the subcommittee about this at all?
Yes,
Go ahead.
thank you. I think you opened this specific agenda item by saying there was, I can't remember the exact word you used, misinterpretation or misunderstanding. So was that primarily around the amount of open space in the buildings? And then is that explained by what Susan just went through? Essentially,
I'll
that
give
they
one
thought that there was more open
example.
space than actually exists?
I'll give one example of the misunderstanding. So Driscoll has 3 sections in it. And so there was a misunderstanding that meant there was an entire strand of classrooms that were empty. But for example, that didn't reflect the fact that Winthrop House has moved in, and so there's use for that, and then in other areas, like if Lawrence, I'm making this up, has 3 sections in a grade instead of 4, the assumption was that means there's an empty classroom somewhere because that it's not a 4-section school in that grade. So it was those sorts of misunderstandings of the table of enrollment, and not realizing that there is a lot of other uses of spaces in the schools, which actually occupy those rooms. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's super helpful context. And so maybe I missed this, but is there somewhere, are we also being asked to present to expenditures and revenue, the percent, like of percent, the percent of the building that's in use, or no, that they don't care about that?
Well, I think the point is, if you look at this, you'll see that essentially the buildings are 100% in use. There's no empty spaces. Again, the question was, well, in that document, the questions document, it said, how much of your space is unused? And the answer was there's 6 classrooms that are unused. And then they said, well, but there's all these gray spaces where you don't have a section, like at Lawrence. Isn't that an empty classroom?
Okay,
It's like,
got it.
no, those are like, as a school like Lawrence that might be a 3.5 section school, there's a whole bunch of different things going in, and then there's like a whole bunch of other uses of classrooms that happen in parallel and flex around that. So
Okay, understood. Thank you.
yeah.
I guess I just.
Okay, we have the chance, Sarah, to end very
Oh,
close to on
okay.
time.
Then
So
I
this
don't
is
wanna
all in
say
your hands
anything.
right now. Go for
Nope,
it.
I don't want to say anything.
Any other last words before we wrap up? Okay, and of course, to our colleagues on advisory and our colleagues on expenditures and revenues who are here, you have access to those files. They're on the school committee meetings page, and we can discuss them at the other meetings that we have coming up.
Just one quick edit. This
Yes.
map will be there momentarily. It's
Oh,
not there
it's
right
not
now
there
if they're
yet?
looking,
Okay.
so apologies for that.
No worries. Thank you, Betsy, for clarifying.
Sure.
Okay, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, feel better soon.
I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.